right, everybody, welcome to the trailer for season 3 of the show. So, I want to talk to you about some things that are going to be the same, some things are going to be different about this season. So, first thing that I need to tell you is we're doing video this season, which, if you guys are on YouTube, you're seeing that. So, if you guys aren't, you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell, make sure you're getting notifications for when every video goes up. And that's a new thing that we're trying for this season to see if people like the video. I don't know. We'll find out. The other thing that is changing this season is our intro music is going to be brand new, going with something a little more upbeat, maybe a little more aggressive, you might say, in keeping with the theme for this season, which I'll speak about in just a minute. And then we're doing some new stuff with the interviews. So the main thing that I've always done, and we're going to continue to do, is kind of the big interview that runs about 45 minutes to an hour. So that's not going to change. I'm still going to have my list of questions. We're still going to be talking to guests about pertinent issues and things related to the topic at hand. But one of the things that I noticed after doing 2 seasons of the show is that once the microphones were turned off and the session in Squadcast was over, I had some really interesting conversations with these folks when the microphones and cameras were turned off. And I can't recreate that completely because obviously, once the cameras are on, nobody is necessarily their completely authentic self and the person that they are when there's no pressure on them, an interview's happening, so on and so forth. But I am going to try and recreate that to the extent that I'm able. So what we've done so far is you've got a main interview, and that's going to be on that particular topic. So our very first episode of the season is with Dr. Phil Kaiser, who is the pastor of Dominion Covenant or Dominion Presbyterian. I can't remember. It's one or the other, either Dominion Covenant Church or Dominion Presbyterian Church in Omaha, Nebraska. And so our very first episode, you're going to get the main, 45, 50-minute interview, and then there's going to be a segment called After the Interview. And so what we're doing with the After the Interview is me throwing maybe 1 or 2 questions to my guest. They may be related to the topic of the interview at hand, or it may be just something really funny. It could be an opportunity for you to get to know that particular guest a little bit better, learn more about them. So it could be any of those things. But I want to try and capture some of the interesting conversations I've had once the interview has ended. So that's what we're going to be doing as well. And then finally, we're also going to be doing a mini-series like we have done and attempted to do in the last 2 seasons. And I'm really sorry about how season 2 went, guys. Things did not play out or pan out the way that I expected them to for that season. So maybe one day we'll get back to the attributes of God. I just don't know. That season turned out to be way more difficult to get guests for than I ever expected. So, but we are going to be doing a mini-series in season 3. And season 3's mini-series is going to be how sermons work. And so, yes, I shamelessly stole the title of Dr. David Murray's very excellent book titled How Sermons Work. So if you guys want to read a good book on this, that's where I'd go just to start. But what we're going to be doing with the mini-series is talking about things that are related to sermons and sermon preparation. And so for some of you, maybe the first third or so of the mini-series will be really pertinent, where we're going to be talking about things like the 7 cardinal requisites of the sermon, and we're going to be talking about what sermons aren't, and where we're going to try and talk about sort of a theology of preaching, those sorts of things. But then we're also going to delve into questions related to sermon preparation. And so if you're listening to this, you're a student in seminary, you're already a pastor, I don't know, some of what I say there may be helpful for you. I certainly don't presume to be any sort of expert on preaching. I'm absolutely not. On the other hand, my preaching has gotten okay feedback. And I've learned some lessons in that, and maybe what I've learned can help somebody else. And for you guys who are pastors, one of the things that I really want to do with the mini-series is at the end, I want to find 1 or 2 guys who are willing to come on the show that are pastors to talk with us about what they do when they prepare sermons. And so that'll be helpful for folks that are, like I say, seminary students or pastors. But I think it'll also help folks that are just, the average church member. Maybe it'll give you a peek behind the curtain into the amount of work that your pastor is doing or should be doing. Who knows? I mean, maybe your pastor doesn't prepare well. I certainly hope that's not the case. But it'll give you a peek into what your pastor is doing or should be doing when they prepare their sermon. Because I think a lot of folks in the church don't have any conception of how difficult sermon preparation really is, about how much work goes into it. And so I'd like for you guys maybe to get a little bit of a snapshot of that. So now that you know what's coming in season 3, let's talk a little bit about what's happening with season 3. So our theme for this season is going to be Fight for the Future. And there are a few reasons that I went with that theme for this season. Not all of them as, I don't know, maybe we should say nice. I'm not sure what word I'm looking. Not all of them as altruistic as others, shall we say. So our theme is Fight for the Future. Now, here's one reason we're doing that theme. In the last, 6, maybe 7 years, I've been reading a good bit of stuff related to culture, cultural shift, secularism, that sort of thing. And that has always been kind of interesting to me, but I have found some insights in that I think would be helpful. So a couple of books in that regard that have been really influential has been Rod Dreher's The Benedict Option, though I freely admit that there are places where I have significant disagreements with Dreher, and that's not just in theology. The other one is actually Dreher's most recent book, Live Not by Lies, which I thought was actually way better than The Benedict Option. And so those two books have influenced my thinking, as have two other books that are really important. One is The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel, and the other one is Long Night of the Watchman by Václav Benda, both of whom were involved with the Czech resistance to Soviet power in the 1970s and 80s. And so the reason that all of those have intrigued me so much is that I believe we're watching our culture become way more hostile to Christianity in general, to churches more specifically, and to Christians very particularly as individuals. And so I think we're heading into a period where we're going to see the distaste for Christians only increase. I think that we're going to see that due to some of the things that have come out of the Equality Act. I think that we're going to see that because, frankly, I don't trust the people that are on the Supreme Court to make wise rulings that truly protect religious liberty. And so I think we need to delve into some of this area. And so if we know that the future looks dark, then we need to start thinking about fighting for the future. And I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like I have failed here in some ways because I didn't start thinking about some of this stuff early enough. I think that the church should have been preparing for this for at least a decade, and we just haven't been doing it. And I'm as guilty in that regard as anybody is. The other reason that I'm doing this is because I wanted to do a series of interviews with folks that I thought could help you personally as a church member, could help your pastor, your presbytery, those sorts of things prepare themselves for what's coming, and I want to be able to do that in a really concrete way. And so I want to have them offering some good ideas about what you can be doing. So, for example, one guest that has agreed to come on the show for episode, I believe it's either 7 and 8 or episodes 8 and 9, one or the other. We're going to do an episode with him on Fight for Your County. That's going to talk about why Christians being involved in county politics and local politics is so important. And then we're also going to be doing a separate episode with him about his concept of what it looks like to build a sanctuary church in a sanctuary city or sanctuary county. And so he's got some really interesting ideas there. And so that guest is Michael Foster. I'm really looking forward to having him on the show. And so that's going to be a fun interview for us to do, because I think there's going to be a lot of really practical, really concrete things in there for you to do and other things for you to think about. So that's yet another reason why we went with Fight for the Future for Season 3. And finally, we went with Fight for the Future for Season 3 because some folks made me mad. I am really tired of the way that I see Christians that are thinking about this spoken about, especially in folks that are, very strongly two kingdoms, or frankly, some of the folks that are more on the feminist side of the equation tend to be really unhappy with me. And this is me being very upset about it. But I do have this wide streak of contrarian in me. And so here you go. You asked for it, now you got it. So those are three of the reasons that I'm doing season 3, and the theme being Fight for the Future. So give you guys a sneak peek into some of the guests that we're having. We've got Phil Kaiser joining us. We've got Kevin Swanson joining us, who is in Colorado. He's a pastor in the Covenant Presbyterian churches, but he once made a run for the governor's office in Colorado. And so he's a guy that's got a good bit of political experience and has seen behind the curtain when it comes to the political process. We've also got, as I've mentioned, Michael Foster. I'm also hoping to have Dominic Tennant appear on the show. He has agreed to come on, but we haven't gotten that episode recorded yet. My good friend and partner in crime, Mr. Derek Bright, has joined us. We're going to be talking to him about the need to fight for the purity of the church. I think that's going to be a great episode. Or let me take that back. I know that was a great episode. We've already recorded it and it's already scheduled to go out, but I think you guys are really going to like that one. Derek's always fun, and the after the interview segment for his interview is hysterical. So you guys really should be looking forward to that one. Got a few other folks lined up. I'm going to mention one of them here in just a second, but I've also got some other folks that are on the hook that I'm hoping to have join me, but that haven't agreed to come on the show yet. So, for example, I really want to get Peter Jones of the Truth Exchange so we can talk about the resurgent paganism and how we need to fight paganism as part of our fight for the future. Some other guests that I've got coming on, we're going to interview Matt Trewhella. We're going to talk to him about the doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. We're going to be interviewing Dr. Cal Beisner at the Cornwall Alliance. He did his PhD dissertation on Sir James Goodtree's and Covenanter resistor theory. And so we're going to be talking to him about the need to fight for godly magistrates or godly rulers and elected officials. And so that's going to be, I think, 2 very good episodes. I haven't recorded them yet, but they're coming up pretty fast. In addition to that, we've got one guest this season that I am super excited about on multiple levels. And so some of you, before I left Twitter entirely and went over to gab.com, would have seen me posting about how I was hoping to get Plug Kilson to join us this season. And so I'm pleased to announce that the Reverend Mr. Plug Kilson will in fact be coming on the show. For those of you who don't know who that is, that's secret code for Reverend Doug Wilson of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. And I think that's going to be a really, really interesting interview. And I'm looking forward to his after the interview segment, because when I get him on and we do the after the interview segment, I'm going to ask him to give us a 20, roughly, year retrospective on the federal vision and where the controversy was, maybe where the controversy is now, and kind of give us an insight as a guy who was a signatory to the Joint Federal Vision Statement of where he sees things. Now, I know having Doug on is going to make a lot of you angry. I know that having Doug on is going to earn me some enemies. And so I want to remind you what I've reminded you of throughout the existence of the True Presbyterian. If you go to my Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/thetruepresby, you will find the original episode 0 that I recorded that was the trailer for the entire podcast for the True Presbyterian. And one of the things that I said when I recorded that original version of episode 0 is that I will talk to absolutely anybody. And so if that's a problem for some of you, I'm sorry, but I'm also not. So I can't always and only have guests on that I think my audience is going to agree with 100% down the line. Every guest that I've had on the show, I have some theological disagreements with. Some more significant, some less significant, but I have some differences with them. So that's just the case. That's just the nature of the beast, we might say. So, and speaking of Patreon, I need patrons. I need them badly. Okay, so the cost of hosting this thing and the cost of, having time to record at squadcast.com, all of that costs money. And so I would like to get my Patreon page up to at least $50 a month, because that's going to help take some of the pressure off. That's not going to make the podcast pay for itself. I'm still going to be footing the bill, or I should say, we are still going to be footing the bill, because my wife is involved in this significantly. And so we would still at $50 a month be footing part of the cost of recording this show and all of the things that go into it. And so, but that is going to help take some of the pressure off. And guys, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. My wife and I had an agreement that we would only do this for a certain period of time. And if we didn't get to the pace where we were, hopefully breaking even or almost breaking even, then we were going to pull the plug on it. And so if I don't reach that pretty soon, there's not going to be a season 4. So hope you guys are as excited about season 3 as I am, and I will talk to you next Monday.